It is the height of Targaryen rule, with their family numbers plentiful and their dragons many. The long reign of King Jaehaerys has gifted them with a surplus of might. There is no force in Westeros with the power to challenge their dynasty, forged in the fall of old Valyria itself, except themselves. Rhaenyra Targaryen, the only surviving child of King Viserys I and his first wife, Aemma Arryn, is named heir to the Iron Throne by her father. This unprecedented move was intended to secure the succession and prevent future disputes. Rhaenyra was groomed for leadership, receiving extensive education and training, and enjoying the favor of her father and the court. Preceding the events that would lead into the Dance of Dragons, she was set up to ascend to the height of power within her historic bloodline. Having failed repeatedly to produce a male son for the continuation of his line, King Viserys I publicly declared Rhaenyra as his heir, displacing his brother Daemon and solidifying her claim to the Iron Throne. He also told her of an ancient prophecy from as far back as the time of Aegon the Conqueror, of a great, cold, dark death coming from the north, of a threat that could only be stopped if a dragon-riding Targaryen was on the throne to meet it, making her his heir, a groundbreaking decision that aimed to ensure a smooth transition of power so that the Targaryen line could strengthen itself to meet this future threat. Upon this declaration by Viserys, Rhaenyra garnered the support of several powerful houses, including House Velaryon and House Stark, but many more than this pledged fealty to the new heir to the Iron Throne. Her marriage to Laenor Velaryon further strengthened her political alliances. House Targaryen's most potent asset, dragons, were also firmly in Rhaenyra's favor. She commanded a significant number of dragons, including her own, Syrax, which bolstered her military might. It should have been mere formality for her to take the throne and continue the preparation for the coming of the next long night. All was in place. And yet, it was all torn from her grasp, a tearing that was made all the possible by her many flaws and ill-conceived actions. And one must keep in mind that in this analysis, we will be regarding House of the Dragon as canon along with the books, but at the same time discussing book events that the show left out. Despite all these advantages given her, Rhaenyra's path to the throne was marred by a series of poor decisions and personal flaws that ultimately led to her downfall. Rhaenyra's personal relationships and decisions often undermined her position. She seemed to enjoy the benefits of absolute privilege, but with very little responsibility. Her hidden affair with Sir Harwin Strong was laid bare to the world when her children resembled more his family than that of those of Valyrian heritage. This was only brought more starkly into contrast when her brothers were born with the traditional Valyrian looks lacked by her own issue. It gave her detractors even more reasons to push for a viable replacement as heir, though King Viserys stubbornly refused to do so, choosing to enable his daughter's reckless behavior by turning a blind eye to her actions. In the show, Viserys is shown to be willfully ignorant of Rhaenyra's illegitimate sons, being king not preventing him from being a man desperate to keep his family together without totally upending the social order. While not shown in the show, in the books, Viserys, the normally amiable monarch, becomes an accomplice to Rhaenyra's persecution of those that questioned the legitimacy of her issue, even ordering the removal of the tongues of those that fled Dragonstone to escape vengeance at his daughter's hand for daring to broach the issue. Coming to their king to seek redress, they were caught up in the deadly games that those in such heights of power play. She displayed an incredibly self-absorbed nature even when it came to lords of other great houses. She sends her own son to treat with Boros Baratheon, a man she didn't even know well enough to know he hated her, though she had years to come to some sort of realization of this fact. that one of the most powerful lords in Westeros detested her, a lord whose support she would need to rule long and well, and she's oblivious to the fact that he doesn't have the same loyalty to her as his father. This seems to fit in with her self-centered behavior on display when she abruptly ends her progress for a suitor through Westeros to return to King's Landing. It simply does not seem to enter her mind the amount of lords that would be offended by her actions. Even her father bemoans this action, trying to impress upon her the amount of strings he had to pull to put that progress in place. Rhaenyra's harsh treatment of dissenters and her inability to maintain unity among her supporters alienated key allies, even the influential Corlys Velaryon, one of her chief supporters. Her punitive actions against the Velaryon family in the face of the massive support they had given her created fear and resentment among her own camp, weakening her base of support when she needed it the most. Faced with betrayal from dragon riders that had sworn allegiance to the Black faction, she turned on those who truly were loyal to her, issuing arrests for those she suspected might betray her. Upon King Viserys' death, Rhaenyra was not in King's Landing to secure her claim immediately. This allowed her half-brother, Aegon II, to seize the throne with the backing of influential factions. The ensuing conflict, known as the Dance of the Dragons, was a devastating civil war that decimated the Targaryen dragons and led to massive losses on both sides. Ultimately, Rhaenyra's son, Aegon, would end up on throne, but the advantages and might of House Targaryen had possessed in dragon numbers and family talent were utterly gutted. Yet as reckless as Rhaenyra's actions are, it is perhaps the underlying attitude and mindset behind them that ensured that she would be erased from the annals as Queen of Westeros. In House of the Dragon, while on an illicit excursion from the palace in the guise of small folk, while watching a play depicting her family drama and the general preference for a male king, Rhaenyra Targaryen's assertion to Daemon that the wants of the small folk are of no consequence highlights her delusional power trip and a significant flaw in her leadership approach. This statement reveals several critical aspects of her character and political strategy. Rhaenyra's dismissive attitude towards the small folk underscores her sense of entitlement and arrogance. As a member of House Targaryen, she believes in the divine right of her family to rule, which blinds her to the importance of the people's support for a long and successful reign. True, King Jaehaerys was himself the originator of Targaryen exceptionalism, but he himself had managed to garner popular support among the people, although admittedly that was easier when succeeding the tyrannical reign of Maegor the Cruel. Her statement shows a profound disconnect from the realities of governance. Effective rulers understand that the stability of their reign depends on the welfare and support of all their subjects, including the common people. By disregarding the wants of the small folk, Rhaenyra fails to acknowledge the potential for unrest and rebellion that can arise from widespread discontent. And it all reveals a myopic view of the matter, because even if she didn't think that it mattered if the small folk saw her children as illegitimate, there were many powerful lords who hold to the faith of the Seven that it would matter too. And king or queen, with dragons or no, the great houses of Westeros do indeed matter. Rhaenyra's remark also reflects her hubris and short-sightedness. Overconfident in her position and the loyalty of her noble supporters, she neglects the broader political landscape. This short-sighted view hinders her ability to build a durable and inclusive base of support. This attitude is seen again when she increases the taxes upon the people to refill the treasury. She actually thought that her decree was a magical incantation for peasant compliance to her bidding, not realizing the boiling discontent from a prolonged siege and war boiling right outside her door. This moment serves as a foreshadowing of Rhaenyra's eventual downfall. Her inability to consider the needs and sentiments of the small folk contributes to her alienation from significant portions of the realm. Rhaenyra's stance starkly contrasts with effective leaders who recognize the importance of addressing the concerns of all their subjects. Successful rulers who engage with and consider the needs of the small folk tend to maintain more stable and enduring reigns. Her failure to do so reveals a critical weakness in her approach to leadership. By dismissing the wants of the small folk, Rhaenyra overlooks the potential influence and power of the common people in the political dynamics of the realm. Her strategic miscalculation in underestimating their importance ultimately undermines her ability to secure and maintain her position on the Iron Throne. We could discuss at length some of the sociopath tendencies possessed by Rhaenyra. Throughout the entire show, we never show any affection to her brothers, even as babies. She also does not seem that distraught that one of her sons put out her brother's eyes, instead using the opportunity to position herself as the wronged party. One does not need to take sides to feel some sympathy for their family members, yet we see her display none towards her own flesh and blood. But for now, we'll just consider it a bit odd. This all points to something we would like to call Ivory Tower Syndrome, which we would like to subscribe as a state of being in which someone is so insulated from their bad choices that they never make the course correction necessary that they would if the situation were otherwise. Rhaenyra is protected from consequences to her actions by her Targaryen blood, by her status as a near head of state by virtue of birth, by her weak, by well-meaning father, but her lover, Criston Cole, who she tosses aside once convenient, by her sense power as a dragon rider, and even by her belief that her old Valyrian heritage ensures her a glorious destiny in a land of lesser mortals. If she had been taught humility by doing tasks thought beneath her, or even fostered by a sterner, more exacting hand, she might have benefited from the same lessons Egg learned with Dunk. A view of things from the eyes of the small folk and a compassion for those less fortunate than herself. These lessons made Aegon V a better person and monarch beloved by the small folk for trying to better their plight. But Rhaenyra learned none of these lessons, though her line did continue through her son Aegon, and is viewed by most down through history as grasping for power. A grasp that leads to her dark and tragic end at the hands of her own kin. Rule, highlighting the crucial role of broad-based support in effective leadership.